Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being here tonight. We're just going to have a little chat, the two of us. I have interviewed Maro before. He was on my podcast, so we've met before, so it'll be nice and relaxed. And then I want you guys to also feel free to ask some questions and talk to Maro in a little while as well. But thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you all for coming. A lot of very smiley faces. So compliments of the season. Happy New Year. Hope you all had a good time. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, obviously you've got a big day tomorrow. We're talking more Six Nations in the moment. The squad announcements tomorrow morning. Eddie Jones has got a big job, hasn't he, this year? As I said, we'll talk about that in a moment. But we were just going to talk about really how it all started. Because I think there's also, I saw a youngster in here, a very young little boy, I think, somewhere, and I thought it's quite interesting also to hear how it all started. So when you were at school, I mean, you played basketball, football, rugby, but you were also under-17 England shot putter. Did you know that? So you represented England. I don't know if you know that. But so how did you just manage it all? Because also I know that your parents were very keen on you having an education. They were very much into that sort of the academic side.
Yeah, definitely. So I started playing rugby at the age of 11. My family are Nigerian. We come from Nigeria. So for those of you who don't know, rugby is not really a thing in Nigeria. The African Cup of Nations is going on at the moment. It's football is the Nigerian sport. Football is the sport they love. So my parents never had any ambition for me to be a rugby player or an athlete at all in general. Their focus has always been on academics, education, getting a good degree, then going into the professional world in some form of capacity. So, but growing up, there was an encouragement to play sport, mainly as a way of blowing off some energy, keeping fit, etc., etc. And I moved to a secondary school at the age of 11, which predominantly played rugby. Rugby was the main sport. So my brother, who was a year older than me, was at the school, was playing rugby for a year, absolutely loved it. And as a result, you know, the excitement to play this sport called rugby, you know, grew within me. So I went there, and everyone kept on telling me, "Oh, you'll be good at rugby. You're tall. You're big." At the time, I was much taller than my peers, but I was a skinny little ragdoll. But yeah, I took to it. I loved playing it. It was mainly as a way to socialize. It was a new environment to make friends. Then I quickly, you know, enjoyed it. I loved playing rugby. Loved being part of the team. But at the time, obviously, when you first start playing rugby, the ambition isn't to be a professional rugby player. The ambition is just to have fun and, you know, just enjoy yourself. So, you know, I played a few different sports. Played basketball. I played boarding house football, which operates with different rules than normal football. Far more aggressive. Did athletics, you know, did shot put. I did a couple of the sprint events, and yeah, I just tried to take in as much as possible growing up.
So when was it that rugby, I guess, sort of took a front seat for you rather than the other sports? So because as you were representing, you know, England with shot put, I mean, you knew that wasn't your career, I suppose. Was that the feeling?
Well, I don't know, has anyone thrown shot put?
Very badly.
Has anyone watched a shot put event? It's not the most entertaining sport in the world. It's not the most enthralling.
Yeah, now I see what you mean. Yeah, I do. I fully do.
So I joined the Saracens Academy when I was 14, and they asked me to join after watching a county trial. So that was probably the first step when things started to get a little bit serious. But even at then, you know, there's numerous amount of people who join academies at the age of 14, 13. When I went there, I saw pretty much all the players who were reasonably good within my area were there. So whilst it was, you know, an achievement, it wasn't any, well, it's not something that already a marker that you're definitely going to do this, because the pool, as with all academies, is quite large. But by the time I probably got about 15, 16, rugby started to consume pretty much all of my holidays. Yeah. So all of my summer holidays, I was waking up at the crack of dawn to get to training. It was destroying all of my social time with all my friends. So probably at that time, I thought to myself, all right, like, especially when you hit around 16, you start to see people who are a year or two above you, who you've seen go through a semi-similar kind of process with you, start to get professional deals or contracts. And, you know, as with everything, once you see someone do something, it becomes a bit more realistic to you. So at that time, I was like, okay, if I stay on the right path, if I do X, Y, and Z, if I continue to improve, then I should hopefully make that transition.
So it was very real in your head that, you know, it was a possibility you were going to be a professional at that point. You wanted to pursue that?
Yeah, definitely. Especially going back to those 15, 16 years, because, you know, as a teenager, they're the years where you're beginning to find yourself. They're the years where your friends start going out more independently. And, you know, I had to make a conscious decision there that if I want to be the role player that, you know, that I think I can be, I want to have to make certain sacrifices along the way. And part of that sacrifice was the social time that I was spending with my friends. So I think at that point, that's when I was like, you know, but even still, then you want it to be, but it's still not certain, like, because still a lot of people get cut at that point.
And in the meantime, were your parents still pressuring you to finish school and to go to university, which you did?
Yeah. So,
and that's difficult, isn't it?
So going to university, for me, it wasn't a choice. It was...
you are going.
It was. I had to probably choose between... I'm thinking a bit like Megxit. Like... I have to like divorce my family or pursue rugby. It was something along the lines of, you know, my family won. Yeah, so when rugby started to become serious for me, my housemaster at the time called my dad and he was like, Maro. He was like, Mr. Itoje, your son is quite good at rugby. Then my dad, like, not really knowing what rugby was, obviously knew of it, but didn't really know, you know, the intricacies of it. He was like, okay. Then he called me and he was like, Maro, this rugby, like, how's it going? I was like, yeah, I'm playing a lot of rugby now. I'm really enjoying it. He was like, okay, you can play rugby, but if the grades drop, the rugby stops. He said that to me. Then I was like, look, there's no need to worry. You know, my grades won't drop. No. And as you do, like, you can imagine, I remember when I was choosing which university to go to, and at that time, about 17, I knew that I was gonna get a professional contract. So at that time, your mind is, you know, filled with excitement of what is potentially ahead of you, and this journey that you've been dying to be on for so long. And your mind starts to have like tunnel vision on rugby. Okay, this is going to be my career. I want to make the most of it. And you start to forget about other things. And I think something that my parents were really good at was like emphasizing the importance of education. Because I could have easily, in my head, decided, all right, let me just do a year of professional rugby and then I'll come back to it later. And you can do that, and some people do that successfully. But what I learned is, especially at undergraduate level, the longer you delay it, the harder it becomes. And they were quite strict with me in terms of the universities that I chose to apply to, and I was picking universities to fit in and around my rugby. My dad was like, nope. He was like, nope. Then we eventually, chose the uni, which was, ticked both boxes. So it was great.
And that was a politics degree.
Yes.
And I know when we spoke that it's something that you may want to go into in the future, isn't it? Or have you gone off that idea? Now, probably with what's unfurling, in the world of politics.
No,
I wouldn't be surprised if you'd gone off it.
No,
How do you feel now about it? Because you were quite, 18 months ago, I did say to you about it, and you were quite sort of, I might want to.
So politics is definitely
dabble with it.
Yeah, politics is definitely an interest of mine. It's something that, I've been interested since probably about 15, 16. I find a lot of political figures interesting. I find ideology interesting. So it's definitely an interest of mine. All that being said, I'm not too sure if it's going to be the right career for me, but, never say never.
It's very low at the moment, isn't it?
That's what it seems like.
I think absolutely. So you signed your first professional contract for Saracens. It was 2012, wasn't it? What was that like, being offered that, signing after all that hard work, and as you said, sort of forsaking your social life really and spinning so many plates? I mean, it must have been incredible.
Yeah. I remember the day in which I got off the phone and my academy coach called me to tell me that I was signing they're going to offer me a deal. I think it was the 8th of September, 2012. And it was a surreal moment. It was, it's as a young player, that is what you've been aspiring to for such a long time. So it was a surreal moment. The actual signing of my contract wasn't that surreal. My academy coach said, Maro, come over here. It was after like an academy training session on Tuesday night. He's like, he took me into his car. You're like, yeah, just sign that. That's the that's the deal. Yeah, that's the deal we agreed. Yeah, just sign that. Then I was like, I thought it would be a little bit more glamorous than this.
I know, I was about to say, there's no romance here. There was no romance in the contract.
Like,
what a shame.
I thought, whenever you see people make their signing, they have their shirt, they hold it like this. Shaking that. I thought I was going to get that treatment, but I'm still yet to get that treatment, to be honest. It's not as pretty as it sounds.
So you signed, but it was the next year. It was that 2013-14 season that you made your debut. Just tell us about that. I mean, it must have been quite something.
Yeah. So, it was amazing. My first year, I was fresh out of school. At the time, we had the likes of Steve Borthwick at the club, who was a former England captain, and he was captain at Saracens. We had all these big players. I think we had John Smith at the club. We had, a lot of the guys who are now established players like Jamie George, Owen Farrell, George Cruz, Jackson Ray, who were like at that 23, 24 sort of level where they were the new generation and the guys coming through. And it was a rich blend of experience. And for me to walk into that environment, especially on the curve that Saracens were at the time, was amazing. And it was also incredibly humbling because you go through school level and you think, all right, I'm actually not a bad player. I could hold my own. Then I remember going into my first line-out session, and it was against. I was in as expected. I was in the reserves, the bench sort of team, and they were competing against the team that was starting, and it was Steve. I think maybe Steve Borthwick and Moritz Bofer in the row, and Steve Borthwick must have been about 35 at the time. I was a fresh 18-year-old, full of energy. In my head, I thought, I'm gonna have this guy. I'm gonna have this guy. He's old. He's a bit slow. I'm gonna have him. The session happened, and I couldn't get anywhere near him. He was jumping like a salmon. Everything he was doing was like miles ahead of where I was. And at that moment, I realized okay, there's still a massive gap that I need to overcome, and there's a massive amount of work that I need to do in order to be the player, or to be the type of player that I think I could be.
And of course, rugby is such a physical game, as we know. I mean, you know, the experience those players had, as you quite rightly said, is second to none. But what about the mental side, and how did you deal with that as a youngster at a team with all these greats, and you know, and you're playing the Premiership, quite frankly? How was that?
Yeah, it was interesting, and like, I think experience helps with that a lot. So, you know, the more experienced I've become, the better I've been able to deal with like different situations. I think at the start, I was very much a nervous player, a player that was anxious. I used to have, you know, my night's sleep before games were terrible. They were absolutely terrible.
Were they really?
Yeah.
Would you be waking, just going over the game and what you've got to do?
I'll be nervous. I'll be anxious. And I think I've thought a lot about it, and I think is the reason why I was like that, because I cared so much.
Yeah.
And like especially when you're a young player, like at the time Saracens were winning, you know, they'll win 8, 9 games out of 10. They were on that upward trajectory. Then I thought, all right, so if they're winning, like pretty much they win every week, if I come into the team and they start losing, I'm the only changing factor here, so it must be my fault. So some of that like fear of losing was something that, you know, I had to deal with. But as with time, you know, the more experience that you get, the more you know about how you prepare, how to get your body right, how to get your preparation right on a mental side. All of that tends to ease.
Incredible. Let's talk about, because it's nearly, isn't it, about 7 years to the day that Eddie Jones rang you up, told you were in the Six Nations squad. 7 years, is it? 2016, I think.
I think about, 2016, so yeah.
So about this time, because obviously the announcement's tomorrow for the upcoming Six Nations. So what was that moment like? I mean, obviously you were going to play for England, you know, and that was, I'm sure, a huge goal for you. What was that moment like? Because I think you told me about your mum's reaction. Do you remember when you said, she broke down, didn't she? She was like, oh my God.
So if I was going to compare and contrast, so I remember when I was about 15 or 16, probably 16, and I was at home, and I got a call from my academy manager. It was like, oh, Maro, I want you to train with the first team tomorrow. Then I was like, oh, this is amazing. I was like, yeah, I'll be there. So I hung up the phone, I ran upstairs, I was like, well, my mum, I'm going to train with the first team tomorrow. And she looked at me and said, she was on the phone, and it was like I was disturbing her phone call. She looked at me and said, is that meant to be a good thing? I was like, yeah. Then I walked out. No, but yeah, when I told them that, you know, I was going to be selected for the Six Nations in 2016, you know, they were over the moon. They were, you know, incredibly happy, proud, and, you know, they were very much looking forward to the occasion.
And how big is this for you? How big, you know, a tournament coming up to this? I mean, what's it feel like as you prepare?
Yeah, it's incredibly big, you know. I think something that the last 18, 20 months have shown me is that you can't take these moments for granted. You know, representing England, you know, not many people get to do that. So for me as a player, you know, these are the types of tournaments, these are the types of games that I want to be a part of. These are the types of games I used to watch growing up as a little kid. So it's massive, you know, and I think there's loads of growth within this England team. We'll wait and see what the squad is tomorrow, but hopefully I'm in it. But we will, I think there's loads of potential, loads of growth, and, you know, this year has been a bit of an up and down year. We probably didn't start the year how we wanted, but we probably finished a bit more how we would like. And I think, you know, if we stick together and as players, if we fulfill our potential individually and thus collectively, I think we'll be in a very strong position come 23.
Because, I mean, last year it didn't go to plan. Eddie Jones was heavily criticised, and he criticised though as well, didn't he? I mean, I don't want you to probe you on this, but he was quite vocal about it, especially in his book. There have been sort of rumours that youth is important to him. That's what he wants to sort of focus on this time round in the squad. Is that right? Is that the right thing to do? I mean, what was your take on last year and what happened?
Well, I think whenever, as with all walks of life and almost in any business, organization, institution, whenever performance drops or whenever the outcome is not what you would like or what you hoped, you have to start to ask questions, and you have to look for solutions. And I think he obviously felt that a freshen up was needed. He freshened up the squad. He brought in a whole realm of young, exciting players. Whenever these freshen ups happen, all you do is just hope the freshen up is not happening at your expense.
To you, yeah, exactly.
That's what you hope for. But yeah, that is the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. You have to either keep performing and keep winning, or things change.
What's it like playing under Eddie Jones? You get on well, don't you?
Yeah, Eddie's he's an intense guy. He's very clear with what he wants. He drives his standards. He's not one. He's a straight talking sort of guy. But he does care a lot about the team. He does care a lot about the players, and he's desperate for the team to do well. And that's exactly what you want in a coach.
And it's a big first game, isn't it? Scotland, who have had a transformation, really. 5th of February, is that right? How are you feeling about this? How do you assess this?
Yeah, Scotland. They're not the team. When I was growing up watching the Six Nations,
I was being nice, really. I'm Scottish, but I was trying to be a bit nice.
Scotland used to be the team where you're playing Scotland, 50 points. They're not that team anymore. The quality is high, both with the Scotland national team as well as their provinces within Scotland. They're all very competitive sides now. So, yeah, Scotland's going to be a tough game. It's a game that I enjoy playing. It'll be in Murrayfield, so we don't know what the weather will be like. It could be snowing. It could be gale storms. It could be Hurricane Katrina. But no, Scotland is they're going to be a good team, and we're going to have to be on the money to beat them.
And just when you play for England, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people want to know, is there a difference, or do you just put everything into it? I'm sure you do, for British and Irish Lions, whether it's Six Nations, the Rugby World Cup in Japan was incredible. What an experience. I mean, can you compare any of these, or is it you're just doing what you do as best you can? I mean,
well, yeah, of course.
Does the occasion get to you, I guess, is the question.
I would say you definitely try and do your best regardless of who you play for. However, I believe certain games are bigger than others. And playing for England, that's in the Six Nations, they're all big games. They're all momentous occasions, and if for 1 second you take that for granted, or you start to dip in terms of your mentality, because you definitely know, like, other teams when they play England, that's their biggest game. That's the game that they want to win. So if you're off, then you're just inviting the opposition to get stuck into you. So no, like, look, obviously playing in World Cups, Lions tours is another level altogether, but they're all massive games, and they're all games that you want to put your best foot forward.
I was going to just home in on the British and Irish Lions and being selected. I mean, that's the top of the top. I mean, what an honour.
Yes, most definitely. Playing for the Lions was a dream come true. My first experience was in 2017 in New Zealand, and during the test weeks, it probably gave me a glimpse what it's like to be a Beatle for a little while. The Lions fans are crazy. Honestly, you will go down into the lobby. You go down to the lobby. The elevator doors open. You walk out. All you hear is Lions, Lions.
Does that like put the pressure on you, or have you now learned how to deal with this? Because for us, that's just, I mean, quite frightening thought, and to not manage it in some way. But you do so well, you guys. How do you do that? How do you kind of shut that off and think about what you're doing? And
yeah, obviously, especially when you play for England or the Lions or finals, etc. They're bigger games, big occasions. But what I find is the most difficult part is the build-up to such a game, and not allowing anything to like cloud your judgment. But once you actually get on the field, you're just playing rugby. That's all the nervousness goes, all the anxiety goes, because you're just playing rugby. The difficult part is the build up to it.
Yeah, absolutely. You had a great year last year as well, nominated for the World Rugby Award. I mean, in such esteemed presence of other players. Antoine Dupont won it, didn't he? But I mean, to be there at your age, just 27, as he reminded me outside. I said, you're 27. He said, just. I was like, yeah, wait till you get to my age. What was that like for you? I mean, that was in October, was it, last year? I mean, how did that sort of feel for you to be nominated with, as I said, these incredible players?
It's amazing. I've been fortunate enough to be nominated a couple of times before, and it's a massive honor to receive that kind of appreciation on the world stage, because ultimately that's the stage that I want to be, and that's the company that I want to keep. I want to be one of the best players in the world. I want to have positive impacts on my team and teammates. So to be recognized is good, but often these, especially in a game like rugby, these individual honors definitely do reflect the team, because no one wins anything when they lose. So you need the team to win.
And I just want to go back to your club, Saracens. Obviously, it's been a difficult couple of years. I'm not going to go on about it, but you were demoted, unfortunately, and then promoted. You came straight back at the first time of asking. I remember you talking very philosophically to me, because a lot of people were talking about your future, and you didn't. I mean, we didn't know what you were going to do, whether you were going to stay at the club. What's it been? What was that whole experience like? Because it mustn't have been easy at all, actually.
No, it was definitely a rocky period within the club. That compounded with COVID, it was all a bit crazy, So it went from talking about relegation to talking about whether professional rugby will even exist. So it was fairly dramatic. So for everyone, I'm sure everyone in this room as well, that whole period was a bit tricky. But with that being said, I think it was a period for us to regroup, come together. We had played about 13, 14 games in the championship, going up and down the country, which was interesting.
Different, wasn't it?
Very different. No, but all in all, it was. I think it was. It was an interesting experience. Let's put it that way. It was definitely interesting. It was a mental challenge. You're used to playing, top quality opposition. Then sometimes you play full-time athletes, sometimes you play students, sometimes you play, tradesmen. So it was
good for you, surely.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure.
How funny, brilliant. Well, you've obviously bounced back amazingly, you guys. You're second in the table behind Leicester. As we are all talking about this conversation on diversity, you've been quite vocal about it in rugby. And do you not feel there's enough being done? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I feel with rugby has this stigma of being a middle class sport. Has a stigma of being a sport that, you know, only rich people play.
Do you think that's still? Do you really think it's still there, that stigma?
I think I think rugby to a lot of communities feels very foreign. Yeah, I think it feels very foreign. You know, that being said, like the experience, I do think it's getting better. I do think we're moving in a more positive direction. But you know, I don't think we should ever rest on our laurels, because with diversity, I think it improves every aspect of the game. So the stakeholders, the guys who hold the purse strings, the more diverse their fan base is, the more demand for their tickets, the more interest in their games, the more merchandise they can sell. With broadcasters, the more people want to watch the games, the more people who are interested in rugby, the more people who will pay that subscription fee. For the RFU and the clubs, there's a wider pool to choose from. Again, more demand for the already expensive Twickenham experience. So the point I'm trying to make is that there are no losers with diversity, and you know, I think, especially also if we look at rugby from a sport point of view. Rugby is the little brother in this country. It's the little brother to the big brother of football, and you know, rugby is constantly trying to attract more attention, more interest in their game, and perhaps football doesn't need to make as much of an effort, because football is the dominant game. You know, wherever you go, you know, if you open a newspaper, back page is immediately football. So I think rugby has to do more in order to attract more for the sport to grow, because we all want to see the game become better. So I think diversity, having a wider arms to pull more people into the sport, increases ultimately the money the clubs and RFU broadcasters get. It makes the leagues more competitive. It makes the players more competitive. It makes the teams better, and hopefully will build a broader brand of the game.
Yeah, but absolutely, and people and stars like you are certainly, whether, you know, I know you're a very modest person, very, you know, very kind person, and you don't want to think of it like that, but the more you guys talk out and speak, and you know, it does help. It really does help as well, Maro. Let's just talk about the women's game as well, which it's incredible. It's the fastest growing sport, isn't it, rugby, with women. I mean, you must be so pleased with how far they've come, the recognition that women's rugby is getting.
Yeah, I didn't even know that stat.
Yeah, it's the fastest growing sport.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know, I remember watching the Women's World Cup, I think maybe 2015, and comparing that to the most recent Women's World Cup. I can't remember the date. I think I got the date wrong, but the last Women's World Cup. And comparing that to the most recent World Cup, it was miles apart in terms of the level of skill, the spectacle. It's the way it's going is amazing, and I think it's over the last few years we've seen a conceited effort to well, it seems that way anyway, that they're showing it more. So showing it more on TV.
Helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, showing it more on TV, which increases the engagement, because ultimately, no matter how much we want a certain sport or to grow or anything like that, if you don't see it on TV, there's no way you're gonna, you know, how is it gonna grow? And I think that's been incredibly beneficial to the female game.
Absolutely. And do you ever, just finally here, do you ever just sort of pinch yourself and think, I'm 27 just, 4 English Premiership titles, 3 European Rugby Champions Cups, 3 Six Nations Champions titles, nominated for World Rugby Player. I mean, do you ever just go, oh my God, this is like really happening? I mean, do you ever have that moment?
You know, I think I'm definitely, you know, grateful, and I'm definitely acknowledge that I am incredibly fortunate to be able to do the things that I'm doing at the moment. But with sport is such a forward-looking career that you really can't dwell. Maybe when I retire, I'll be able to look back and smile.
Realize what's happened.
But you really can't dwell. I remember at one point in my life, when I first broke into the England team in 2016, all roads were to Tokyo 2019. That was the biggest thing that it was ever gonna happen in this world. So that came and gone. Then, the moment we landed, there was a bit of the post-mortem after the final for a week or two. Then it seemed as if Lions Tour 2021 South Africa, that's going to be the biggest thing ever. And, that came and went. Then now, a couple months, even less than that, it was a few weeks after the diagnosis was done on the Lions Tour. All roads now are leading to 23. Yeah. France 23, Paris. It's going to be the best. I'm hearing it already. It's going to be the best World Cup that we've ever seen. And what's going to happen? 23 is going to come and go. Then we're going to get back after our off season. It'll be Lions Tour.
You keep going round and round, yeah.
So by saying all of that, the attention is always so forward. And even things that happened a couple of years ago seems like a distant memory.
And does being captain, British and Irish Lions, obviously mooted as captain definitely over the next few years, I mean, is that something that interests you, or Saracens, or, a captain? Does that interest you at all?
I get.
Is that on your radar? That's the question.
I get asked this question a lot.
I know. I thought I'd leave it to last.
I get asked this question a lot. And to be honest, my what motivates me is positively influencing people within my team. Being captain is actually completely out of my control. Is on the control of the head coach or the coach of whichever team I represent. So I don't think it's necessarily healthy to have too much attention or focus too much on that. To be honest, I think I don't think captaincy is something that you campaign for either. I think it's something that is bestowed on you. So it's not something that I wanna pay too much attention to. I think if I focus on my game, if I continue to grow as a player, I think I'll be able to positively influence my team and teammates and myself, become more rounded as a person, and that's from the decisions of another man.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you. Well done. Maro Itoje, been amazing. Good luck tomorrow. 10:45 announcement, Six Nations, Saracens and everything. Thank you so much. Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah. I'm not sure what she was saying. I think she was